All right. Welcome, everybody. It looks like we're letting everybody into the room right now. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to get started in just a sec. My name is Andrew Sondre. I'm the president of the Germantown Democratic Club, and this is the District 15 delegation pre-legislative session town hall. We're so glad that you're all here with us to hear from our elected officials in District 15 before they go away to Annapolis and start doing the people's work for us. So without further ado, I'll just give a little bit of an introduction to how this is going to work. The legislators are each going to have an opportunity to speak about their priorities for this upcoming session. We're going to have, I believe, 3 or 4 minutes where they're going to talk about what their top priorities are. And then we're going to go through a bunch of pre-submitted questions. I've got a very long list here of things that you all sent in. And we're going to try to ask them. We're going to throw them to individual elected officials, but if others would like to jump in and talk about that as well, then they do have that opportunity to do that. To make sure that we keep everybody on time, I believe that Margaret Hadley is here as our timer, and she's got a little yellow band and a little red band, and the yellow band is going to go up when we've got 30 seconds left, and the red one's going to go up when you got time's up. So at that time, we're going to just ask you to start wrapping up if that's possible. Let's see if I have any other introductory things there. Oh, if anyone else has any questions, I know we've got a long list of pre-submitted ones here, but if anyone else has any questions that they'd like to have us ask the elected officials, or if you'd like to ask the elected officials directly, feel free to put that in the chat and we'll try to get to that. We do want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to the District 15 Senator, Senator Brian Feldman. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thank you, Andrew. So I only get 3 or 4 minutes here. I didn't know that. Is that we're here an hour and a half, and we only get 3 minutes to talk?
At the top, and then I mean you're gonna have a long time to speak to questions.
Okay. Well, let me just start by thanking the District 15 Caucus, German Democratic Club, and Central Committee. Special shout out to Michael Tardif and Andrew Sondre for putting this together. I spoke at another event last night in front of 100 people. And so I think some of the same people are here that heard me speak last night. So I may reiterate a lot of the things. So I apologize to the group who heard me last night and hearing me again. The best part of the town hall is I agree with the Q&A, not a bunch of us talking. At the outset, though, I do want to make a point. A year ago, exactly 1 year ago, we had this very town hall for our pre-2021 session, and we were pressured to try to cancel it. There was talk about we should cancel it because of all the craziness that was happening on Capitol Hill. Several other events got canceled, but we chose in District 15 to keep our event going, and we held it, and I think that was the right idea. We chose to move forward. We thought it was important for democracy to move forward no matter what craziness was happening on the Hill, because this is important as we go off to session. So speaking of crazy, there's really a lot to cover. I just do have to say we're entering the 4th year of a 4-year term, and so much happened this 4-year period. I just have to kind of go quickly through some of the big things. We had 2 presiding officers. We had a Senate president, the longest serving Senate president in the history of our state, passed away. So we have a new Senate president during this term, a new Speaker of the House. Mike Bush, who was the longest serving Speaker of the House in the history of Maryland, took ill and passed away. So we had a changing of the guards during this 4-year term. And then we had COVID. We adjourned for the very first time since the Civil War in 2020. We have more transparency in the General Assembly than we ever had before. You can actually, because of COVID and everything else, you can actually watch our chamber activity. You can watch our voting sessions. So there's, it was just a crazy 4-year term, and we're going into this 4th year. Change and uncertainty in 2021 is going to accelerate in 2022 and into 2023. At the end of 2021, we're going to have a new Ways and Means chair heading into the 2022 session, a new chair of the House Economic Matters Committee. We elected a new state treasurer in December, replacing Nancy Kopp from Montgomery County. And here in District 15, of course, we have a new state delegate in Linda Foley, who you're going to hear from in a minute. She replaced, as many of you know, former delegate Kathleen Dumais, who is now Judge Dumais. I just want to give a quick shout out to Judge Dumais. This is the first event we've had like this town hall without Kathleen in many, many years. She really had an outstanding 19-year legislative career and was at the center of some of the biggest, major policy accomplishments in Maryland over the last 2 decades: marriage equality, guns, family law, and she will make a fantastic judge. Reflecting on my District 15 teammates really quickly, Dave Fraser-Hidalgo chairs a subcommittee on transportation policy. He's the lead voice on electric vehicles and has really stood out on environmental issues. Lily Chi, in her first term, has really, again, taken leadership role on economic development issues, and I've been able to collaborate with her. Hopefully we can talk about some of that tonight. And of course, Linda will have an opportunity Linda Foley, starting next week, to carve out her own niche, and I have every confidence she will do an excellent job. And I look forward to hearing what my 3 House colleagues have to say about their priorities. And there's a lot more. We're going to enter into the 2022 session with redistricting on the plate, including District 15. We're going to have elections of the entire General Assembly. Everybody's up for re-election. The House Government Operations Committee chair has announced she's not running for re-election. The Senate Finance Committee chair is not running for re-election. We're going to have a new governor, a new state comptroller, a new attorney general. And here, of course, in Montgomery County, we have elections for county executive. And we're going to have 11 county council seats. There's just so much change afoot. And on top of that, again, we've got Omicron to deal with as we head to Annapolis next week. The governor announced just on Tuesday a 30-day temporary state of emergency. The state Senate yesterday announced that we're going to have, instead of in-person bill hearings, we're going to move back to virtual bill hearings until February 11th. And then on February 14th, which is a Monday, we're going to try to go back to live bill hearings. But it's very unpredictable, a lot of uncertainty, and yet we're still going to have 2,500 to 3,000 different pieces of legislation coming in this session. For myself, I'm the vice chair of the Senate Finance Committee. It's going to be my 4th year as the chair of the Finance Committee. It has the broadest jurisdiction of any committee in the General Assembly. We deal with healthcare policy, energy policy, labor issues, economic development. And I'm also the Senate chair of the Maryland Health Insurance Coverage Protection Commission, which has been responsible for a whole range of really innovative ideas in terms of getting our uninsured numbers down from where it was 12, 13% 6 years ago to we've cut it in half to under 6% today. So I would say healthcare policy, clean energy policy, and I'm now the head of a work group that's working on the topic of cannabis legalization. Those are going to be 3 issues that I focus in on this session. And there's just a lot to talk about. I guess one final thing about big picture, the budget of our state is actually in a great position. Just very quickly, we were obviously very concerned because of COVID, what the budget would look like in 2021. The reality is we've got a lot of help from the federal government. We're actually in a budget surplus of several $1 billion. But we have to be very smart how we deploy that money and how we invest that money. And hopefully I can talk about some of those things tonight and during the Q&A. The bad news is that we're still suffering from some job creation shortages. Our unemployment rate is above the national average. We want to really do some big things there. And so I'm going to stop there and let my team talk about some different things. But I'd like to get into, hopefully during the Q&A, into some very specific bills that we passed in 2021 and a bunch of ideas and things that I hope to introduce and be working on in the 2022 session. So Andrew, thank you. I'm going to pass it back and we'll go through our 3 House members and then we'll have an open Q&A. So thanks.
Yes, the next person we have is Delegate David Fraser-Hidalgo. So I'll pass over to him. And I did forget at the top to introduce all of the candidates and electeds who are here with us. So just real quick, council members Friedson and Tom Hucker, I know, are here with us, as well as candidates for County Council, Marilyn Balcom, and I believe that's the only other County Council candidate. We've got former delegate Saqib Ali, who's a candidate for House of Delegates, Robert Bass, who's a candidate for Sheriff, Joan Kleinman representing Senator Van Hollen, Scott Goldberg, who's on the MCDCC, as well as a candidate for county council, Shruti Bhatnagar, who's on the MCDCC, as well as chair of the precinct organization, Tom DeGonia, Bernice Maricu North, and Perry Paler, who are all candidates for state's attorney in Montgomery County, and Marilyn Pierre, who is a candidate for judge. So if I've forgotten anybody, please put your name in the chat as well. And without further ado, Delegate Fraser Hidalgo, thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Andrew. I want to thank everybody for putting this together. Andrew, Michael, Gail, Kathy, I'm sure I missed several people that have worked so hard to put this together every year, especially now. I think that Senator Feldman did a great job of kind of giving everybody a kind of a preview of what's coming. The House is going to be a little bit more similar to the Senate this year. We'll be down next week for a couple of days, and then I think we're going to be doing a lot of committee hearings will be done via Zoom from home, and then probably about 2 or 3 weeks in, we will be down there. And I think the hope is that that kind of coincides with a peak or the drop off of the Omicron COVID situation. So hopefully that will be all done, or it'll be close to being done, because when we get down there's no annex this year. There's no separation in the House. Last year we had a separation. We had about half of the people on the House floor and the other half of the people, delegates in the annex, which was in a separate building. I don't think that's going to happen this year. So there's, I think, a lot more concern of making sure we get Omicron, at least the majority of it, behind us before we go in. With that said, I will just kind of go through some of the bills that I'm working on, and I guess we can go to Q&A afterward. But I'll go through some of the main things that I'm working on. So I serve as the chair of the Motor Vehicle Subcommittee and the Transportation. The Environment and Transportation Committee, which basically means I deal with a lot of the motor vehicle type work. Some of the transportation bills come through my subcommittee that I work on. And as many of you know, one of the big things that I work on a pretty regular basis are electric vehicles. So we should, by 2025, have somewhere between 250 and 300,000 electric vehicles registered in the state of Maryland. We are currently at about 39,700 or 800, close to 40,000. That has increased dramatically in the last couple of years and during COVID. This is a deal that we, a memorandum of understanding that we have, and a deal that we have with California. It's called the Zero Emission Vehicle, or ZEV, Zero Emission Vehicle Mandate. Also in 2007, we had a clean cars bill, which was a piece of legislation that kind of holds us to certain numbers as far as goals are concerned for electric vehicles. So we've had several of those bills over the years. We'll have another one this year. Again, it's just trying to figure out how we can get more electric vehicles on the roads, some infrastructure as well. As we get more electric vehicles, we obviously need more charging. The fact of the matter is most people charge from home. So 97 or 98% of the time, if you have an electric vehicle and you have a stable place at home to charge, you charge from home. But there are those trips and there are those occasions where you get stuck. So we need to make sure that there's some transportation infrastructure and charging infrastructure, which we'll be working on this session as well. Senator Feldman talked about a lot of the money that's coming down from the feds. We want to make sure we take advantage of that to work on 270 and 95. But particularly for us, we're looking at 270, making sure we have some charging stations in and around Rockville, Bethesda, all the way up and around Montgomery County, the whole state. But that's what I'll be focusing on. Let's see. I also will have a couple of bills that I'm cross-filing with Senator Kramer. One of them is an emissions bill. For those of you that don't know, essentially everybody that has a car that's built from 1996 forward has to pay every two years. They pay $14 and get an emissions test. And that's what we do to try and keep emissions down and keep cars clean. If you have a car that's older than 1996, you don't have the OMD sensor on it, which is the computer that plugs into the emissions charging station, the emissions center, to figure out exactly what your car is doing. So what my bill will do is basically say, if you have a car that's older than that, you don't have to pass emissions, because you can't, but you still have to pay the $14, and that $14 will go into a special SEIF, Strategic Energy Investment Fund, to help promote more electric vehicles moving forward. Let's see, carbon pricing. I've had a carbon pricing bill in for every year for the last few years. I'll have that bill in again. Again, that helps to kind of level the playing field when it comes to the fossil fuel industry that gets a lot of A lot of advantages. They get about $100 billion a year, every year, in federal tax incentives, credits, land grants, that kind of thing, which puts them at a competitive advantage over traditional electric vehicles. So that'll kind of level that playing field. There's a few other bills along those lines that I'll get into. And then the last piece, which I think some people would like to hear more about, is White's Ferry. So I'll just kind of go on White's Ferry and then we'll move along. So many of you know that White's Ferry, about a year ago or so, there was a dispute between two private landowners in two different states, and White's Ferry was closed. Since then, we, the District 15 team, and the county executive and all members from all over the federal side as well, Senator Van Hollen and Congressman Trone's office, we have been working very diligently to try and get some resolution or try and move that forward. One of my partners that I want to give a really big shout out to is Councilmember Andrew Friedson, because he's been with me on all the calls. As a matter of fact, New Year's Eve 2020, we had a call with the Poolsville commissioners on New Year's Eve at about 8 o'clock at night. And I called Andrew. I'm like, hey, let's get on this call. And he's like, yep, let's go. So we got on the call. I will tell you, just to kind of bring you up to date on where we are now, a businessman in Virginia purchased the rights for White's Ferry from the Maryland owner, Mr. Brown, and thinking that he could do some negotiation on the Virginia side, since they're both from Virginia, and just kind of start anew. That didn't work out really well for him, because the person that owns the property over there, the family, just doesn't seem to be really interested in the idea of opening White's Ferry. So what's ended up happening is we've been working with Loudoun County Department of Transportation and Montgomery County Department of Transportation, and put together a study to come up with all of the actual facts. There's a lot of misinformation out there about who owns what property where, and who what deed is to what deed and what easement is to what easement. So there was a joint study that was done by Montgomery County Department of Transportation and Loudoun County Department of Transportation, and a really great report that detailed all the facts of who uses White's Ferry, the facts of who owns what easements, and kind of gives us some ideas of some options moving forward. We've used those to do everything we can to help our friends on the other side of the river. We've done everything we can to help the Loudoun County commissioners. And I think at this point, they're weighing their options now that they have all the facts as far as what the best way to move forward is to resolve the issue. And I want to stress that everything that we've been doing has been to put ourselves and Loudoun County in a position where we resolve this issue of White's Ferry being a major piece of transportation infrastructure, to resolve it permanently. We don't want to ever have to do this again. So it's taking us a little bit longer, but by the time it's all said and done, I think we'll have a permanent solution to White's Ferry. And right now we're doing everything we can to support the Loudoun County commissioners. Again, we're in Montgomery County, Maryland, and they're in Loudoun County, Virginia. So it's really up to them. It's pretty much all up to them. And we're just giving them every piece of support we possibly can on this side to get the situation rectified. And I will just turn it over back to Andrew, and we can get into Q&A on more details, some things in the future if we want. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate. Now I'm going to pass it over to Delegate Lilici.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and great to see everyone. Happy New Year. I want to also give a shout out to the hardworking District 15 caucus leadership and the members. It's not easy to run a caucus, and you have done a tremendous job. I do think District 15 has the most active and the best caucus. I also want to thank the Germantown Democratic Club for stepping up to host this, and you have done an impressive job, even though you are very new as an organization, and Andrew Sandre. I also want to give a shout out to my staff team. Katie Hardy is now my new Chief of Staff coming 2022. So let's give her a warm welcome as Lisa Dobbs steps aside to take a lesser role, but she's still very much part of my team. I shouldn't say step aside, but she decides to take a slightly different role. I want to just remind everyone that we are on the eve in the evening of January 6th. I remember exactly a year ago this time, we actually debated with ourselves whether or not we would go forward with this, with last year's town hall. Even though we lost about half of the registered attendees, we still had a very productive meeting. And my point is, this is a day when we are reminded of the state government's role in safeguarding democracy and especially elections. So thank you to all of you for engaging with the state government and the legislators. I want to just start by saying that as a first-term legislator, I have been learning tremendously and reflecting a lot. This pandemic gave me a lot of time to think about what I have learned and why I do what I do. I'm just so honored to represent District 15, this amazing community and activists that taught me so much. And also this wonderful team, Senator Feldman and now Judge Dumais, Delegate Dumais and David Fraser-Hidalgo, Delegate David Fraser-Hidalgo. They have taught me a great deal about policymaking and about our community. So I'm really humbled and honored to be part of this team. And I very much look forward to working with Delegate Linda Foley. I had a very productive first 3 sessions. I can't complain in spite of the dramatic changes and challenges that nobody could have foreseen. I introduced a total of 3 dozen bills. What did I know? I just kept introducing what I thought might be a good idea. Not everyone agreed. All of my ideas were great ideas. A dozen of the bills did pass, so I'm still fortunate. As the Senator Feldman said, that I did carve out a niche in my focus in economic development. So about half of the bills passed were related to economic development. Some of them you probably have heard me talk about before. I'm very grateful that this past December special session, we actually overrode governor's veto of my cross-filed bill with Senator Feldman, HB 419, I think it's SB 460, which is to enhance green bank funding and designate a state green bank, enhance green bank funding, and establish a clean energy accelerator so that we could actually advance clean energy innovation and entrepreneurship to be more competitive and create more job opportunities in that regard. And I'm also very grateful that Speaker Jones appointed me to chair the Transforming Manufacturing Making Maryland work group, which was created by my bill to make sure that we are more competitive in growing the manufacturing sector, which is a cross sector of different industries in Maryland. We have a long way to go in helping companies de-risk and adopt the new technologies. And also I have a package of bills that passed in terms of matching grants and technical assistance to further grow our biotech strength and the tech sector. I'm also very proud to have passed the LGBTQ Commission bill. I actually joined their first meeting on Monday night, January 3rd. This was actually a bipartisan effort. I'm proud to say that 17 of my House Republican colleagues also voted for the bill. So that's definitely progress in Maryland. I want to just take a moment to say, I'm very much looking forward to 2022. In the interest of time, let me just rattle off a few ideas I have in terms of a bill introduction for 2022 session. First of all, I don't want to forget by mentioning that I'm thrilled that Speaker Jones just appointed me to the cannabis work group. So I will get to, also work on this very important issue that my Senator Feldman has been a champion of in terms of decriminalizing cannabis, adult use of cannabis, and hopefully we can put on the referendum. So looking ahead to 2022, I'm working on several bills, one of which is road salt reduction, how timely it is, right? We're talking about snow. And I know Montgomery County, especially the former director of environmental protection, Adam Ortiz, now is the Biden appointee, was very passionate about that. He was saying, Lily, I'm literally in tears that you are paying attention to this because I've been trying to scream to the State Department of Environment and they were not paying enough attention to that. So state government, county government, municipal government, each apply their salt. And their contractors have to be trained and certified to apply a certain amount of salt so that it's not oversalted, because the extra salt not only erodes infrastructure, contaminates and hurts wildlife, but also eventually runs into our waterway and drinking water, which we cannot take out effectively because of the cost, right? So the Smart Salt Program bill that I am cross-filing with Senator Kagan will require the private vendors, private companies, think of the Walmart and Target and even churches of the kind that own parking lots, right, own their own real estate properties, to make sure that their vendors that plow snow would also be properly trained and certified to reduce the amount of salt. This was actually brought forth by one of the community members who was an advocate on this issue. The other is I'm going to introduce a bill to help manufacturing companies de-risk the adoption of technologies, because as we expect them to be more competitive, many of the smaller, medium-sized manufacturing companies in Maryland are not being competitive because they're afraid of adopting new technologies that are very expensive, unproven. So they need some technical assistance and they need some funding to make sure that they can cross that bridge into the 21st century in their technologies. I'm also working on consumer protection bill. At the federal level, the Congress is actually now acting on something called the Inform Bill, which is to combat organized retail crimes when people loot the stores and steal goods and then they sell them online, including counterfeited products on Amazon and eBay's. So this bill would essentially require Amazon and eBay, those major marketplaces, to collect data and including ID and detailed information from the vendors so that they cannot just easily sell whatever they steal. And it's gaining momentum at the Congress level. So if the federal passes that bill, it would preempt the state law. But without the assurance of Congress, I happen to think Maryland state happens to function better than the Congress many times, right? in terms of effectiveness of passing bills and getting things done. So I'm moving forward on that one. I'm also working on transparency in Medicare funded home care, because with the pandemic, we see a lot more need and demand for that workforce, but that workforce has the highest turnover because it's not respected as a profession, and 70% of the workforce of home care workers are underpaid and overworked, and they often don't get compensation for injuries, and they have no basic rights and access to basic benefits. So my bill, which actually passed, but I'm going to introduce a different version to enhance that, would require data collection transparency to see how those Medicare funded companies in Maryland are actually paying their workers, because it's important to the seniors and those people who are immobile at the home, and to have a stable relationship with their workers who are paid properly by those companies who receive state dollars. And finally, I have a couple of education bills that were proposed by community advocates. One of them is the American Studies curriculum, because after the pandemic and the anti-Asian xenophobia and the bigotry and the Black Lives Matter movement, we have seen how important cultural competency education is for all Americans, starting from a young age. And we're still woefully short. You would laugh, if I tell you that my team reached out to all 24 counties in Maryland, the county school system, to see what they're teaching our kids at different levels. And some of them actually counted emperors and those, world history as Asian American history. I'm not kidding you, okay? So it's all over the map because there's no baseline consistency in terms of teaching American history and cultural competency. So my bill would basically require some baseline assessment and consistency across all counties at the state level. And finally, I have a local bill that would require MCPS, and that's only applying to MCPS to decouple Asian American students' data from the rest of the whites and all others. I think we already know from the 2020 census that Asian Americans are the fastest growing demographic in the state of Maryland, and in Montgomery County, we are already very close to the Hispanic and Black population. It's unacceptable that we are lumped together with the whites and others in our student population tracking. When we are not being measured and tracked and studied, we lose our narrative and our story. It's like a piece of history being lost. So my bill would require that they do that to better understand Asian American student performance dynamics. So I will stop here, and I look forward to taking some questions. I know I rattled off a whole bunch of things, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Delegate. Next up, we have Delegate Linda Foley.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you everyone for being here. It's great to be here in this role. I'm very excited about the legislative session that's coming up. I want to wish everybody a happy new year, and I too want to extend thanks to my friends in the District 15 caucus and the German Democratic Club for hosting this and putting this on. I know from working on these that these just don't pop together. I mean, you know, the work that goes behind this is actually quite extensive to get the technology going and everything else. Anyway, thank you very much. Want to wish everybody a happy new year. And also want to say that I hope that everybody's able to stay healthy. This COVID, and particularly this Omicron variant, is wreaking havoc on a lot of us and a lot of our families and on our community. And hopefully, as has been said, we can get past it quickly. That seems to be the way that it goes, and we can hope that that's true here. I'm brand new, really brand new. Like, you know, I've been in office maybe a month, not even. Everyone in Annapolis has been extremely helpful to me in terms of getting me going and getting me set up. But I'm really, really honored and pleased to be a part of this District 15 team. As you've already heard, my teammates here, my colleagues, both in the House and Senator Feldman, are just extremely competent. They work extremely hard for District 15, and it's a high bar to try to reach as a new delegate. But I'm really honored to be able to work with them, and they're all leaders in their own right. And that's very, very good for me and very, very good for the people of District 15. I've been assigned to the Environment and Transportation Committee, along with Delegate David Fraser Hidalgo. He'll be my leader there. I'll follow his lead because he is a leader on everything environment and also on transportation issues, as you heard. I'm also on the Washington Metropolitan Committee within the Montgomery County delegation, and that's where I cast my first vote last week. So I'm really looking forward to working on a number of environmental and transportation bills that are out there. There are already a number of them that have been filed. Delegate Fraser Hidalgo went over a number of them there that are very exciting. He also has put in a comprehensive bill on environmental justice and climate change. That's a very exciting bill that covers a number of areas. We talked about electric vehicle infrastructure and support. And then also there are a number of bills about converting public fleets to zero emissions. And those are all issues that will be coming before our committee and that I'll be working with Delegate Fraser Hidalgo and others on. Also in the transportation area, there's some bills about pedestrian safety and school safety. That are very important, that are, you know, pretty easy to pass, but are important. And then there are some bills around rapid transportation, bus transportation, and other public transportation options that are out there. Because District 15 includes the Agricultural Reserve, and because I'm on the Environment and Transportation Committee, I will get to work on a number of farm bills that relate to the farmers we have here in Montgomery County, a couple of them that relate to farm to table and farm to schools, meaning, you know, producing local agricultural products that get then transferred to our schools, as well as addressing food insecurity. There's some other bills that are really interesting. One that's coming up has to do with prohibiting people from leaving their dogs out in inclement weather and making sure that their dogs have adequate shelter if they are left outside. So those are the kinds of bills, you know, that kind of gives you the range of bills that we deal with on environment and transportation. That's also where we deal with housing bills, and there's a lot to do there with respect to renters' rights. There's still a lot going on around evictions and making sure that people have adequate representation when they're threatened with eviction and so forth. And a lot of those bills are coming to the Environment and Transportation Committee. One of the things that I would like to work on, and I have talked to Delegate Fraser Hidalgo about this, is to look into whether or not we can do something about these two-stroke gasoline-powered blowers that we've all come to know during the pandemic because we're at home and we hear them all the time. But they're also horrible, horrible polluters. So I would like to work on legislation to address that issue. And then there's some other issues that are out there that are not necessarily coming to the Environment and Transportation Committee that I'm very interested in and committed to working on. I will be a co-sponsor of the Time to Care Act. The Time to Care Act is the Paid Family Leave Act. This is an issue that I have worked on since I came to the Washington, D.C. area, first on a national level when it was unpaid leave, and something that when I was in the union movement, we spent a lot of time and energy bargaining and also putting political pressure to get family leave for to take care of family members, both children and dependent adults. And this bill, the Time to Care Act, would be set up like disability insurance, if you're familiar with that, the way it's being proposed, that both the employer and the employee would contribute to an insurance fund that would pay into it, that would then cover the leave when the leave is taken. It would be on top of your sick leave that you can already take for family and the Family Medical Leave Act that we already have. This would be in addition to that. So that's there, and I look forward to working on that. There are also bills. There's also a bill to eliminate child marriage. I didn't know till I got into this that child marriage is still legal in Maryland. Children can be married at age 17. So there's a bill to eliminate that, eliminate the legality of that. There's a bill to eliminate exception to rape laws for spouses, which is also a surprise. Not the case in Maryland. And I'm very interested in making sure that that gets taken care of. Delegate She mentioned legalizing recreational marijuana. That's actually House Bill number 1. It's already there for the referendum to legalize recreational marijuana. And then, of course, as Senator Feldman mentioned, we have legislative redistricting. One of my big issues that I care very much about is a woman's right to choose, a woman's right to a safe and legal abortion. As we all know, with what's happening in other parts of the country, that law, that right on a national level is being challenged, and we could very well lose that right at the Supreme Court. So I think it's very important for us in Maryland to make sure that we codify those rights for the women of Maryland. And I really want to work on that, even if it comes to having a constitutional amendment to our own Maryland Constitution that codifies the rights to safe and legal abortions for women. So we have a busy session in front of us. I'm very excited about being there. I have already hired staff, which I'm very proud of. My chief of staff is Lisa Fuller, who many of you know. She's from District 15. In fact, all of my staff is from District 15. And we are going to be impacted by COVID, but that doesn't mean that we can't do the people's business. We will do the people's business. This legislature has shown that. And I think that, we're going to have a very busy session ahead, and I really look forward to being there. And I really look forward to being a part of this group of legislators whom you've heard are real leaders and have made a real impact for the better on the lives of Marylanders, not just in District 15, but across the state. And I hope that I can follow in those footsteps as well. Thank you very much. And I look forward to taking your questions.
All righty, thank you so much. As I'm sure everyone could tell, I was a little bit lax on the time for everyone's intros, but I've been told I need to start cracking down with the Q&A. So forgive me if I start cutting you all off as you're speaking, because we do have a lot of questions and we would like to get to as many of them as possible. First, I do want to recognize there were a couple elected officials that I missed the first time around. Former Attorney General and candidate for governor, Doug Gansler, former District 15 delegate, and candidate for Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller, candidate for District 2 County Council Will Roberts, as well as District 15 MCDCC member Greg Wims, and of course the leadership of the District 15 caucus, Kathy and Gail. So thank you all for your work in organizing this. And without further ado, I'll jump into the questions now. So just going back in the order that we went. Originally, I'll throw my first question to Senator Feldman. I wanted to ask about healthcare broadly because it's a very important issue. As you know, we're in the midst of this pandemic, and we're seeing a huge spike in Omicron cases. As many people here know, you're on the Health Insurance Protection Commission. We're wondering if that commission is submitting any legislation this session, or if you're working on any specific pieces of legislation around expanding access to healthcare during the pandemic.
So the good news is, I mentioned earlier, there's a commission that we created. It was actually created when there was talk about repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act. And we created the Maryland Health Insurance Coverage Protection Commission that I serve as the Senate chair, and Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick is the House chair. And that commission, and by the way, we just issued our annual report last week talking about what we're going to do going forward. But if I could tell you just what we did this year and what we're thinking about going, we've been, I think, amongst the leading states in the nation in terms of innovative policies when it comes to healthcare and health insurance. And so let me just tell you what happened this year and what we're working on for next year. We created something called the Easy Enrollment Program that got rolled out. In other words, if you don't have health insurance, you can now go, when you do your state tax return, you check a box and says, I don't have health insurance and I want to have my financial information shared with the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange or Obamacare Exchange to see if I'm eligible for Medicaid or I'm eligible for federal tax credits. And it's a fantastic idea. It was innovative. It was my bill. I will concede that. But so that we rolled it out this year, and tens of thousands of Marylanders who didn't know that they were eligible are actually eligible to get free health care. They were uninsured. Such a good idea that United States Senator Chris Van Hollen announced last month that he's going to introduce a federal version of this program in the United States Senate. In fact, he has a House sponsor from California. So keep an eye on that. This will allow you, if you have no health insurance, to check your federal tax returns. It's called the Easy Enrollment Program. Another thing we did this year, because the key here is you want to get young, healthy people into the insurance rolls. You don't want a risk pool that's filled with older, sicker population. And so this year we I had a bill working with Delegate Ken Kerr from Frederick County that's going to create a subsidy program for young adults between 18 and 34 who are low income, 138 to 140% of the federal poverty level. And what that does is, for example, if you're a 28-year-old, you make $30,000 a year. Right now, you pay about $70 a month for a gold plan on the exchange. Under this subsidy program, you go from $70 to $1 a month. It's a 2-year pilot program. It's very innovative. I borrowed the idea from Massachusetts. It was a product of this commission, Andrew, and we're going to try it, and I think it's going to be successful. It's good for the young folks who don't have health insurance, who think they're invincible, but more importantly, by bringing them in the risk pool, it brings down the premiums for everybody else. So keep an eye on that. We have the biggest reinsurance program in the United States of America in our individual insurance market that came out of the Senate Finance Committee. That has resulted in 31% annual reductions in premiums, the biggest decrease of any state in the United States of America. Medical debt collection legislation that I introduced this year puts guardrails on the ability of hospitals to collect medical debt. You should not become homeless or bankrupt simply become sick. And we put some guardrails in place in the 2021 session. And a lot of this came out of the commission, working with Delegate Pena-Melnick and some of my colleagues in the House. Looking ahead, we have a piece of legislation out of the commission that's going to incentivize small businesses. Right now, big employers, like 95% of large employers, provide health insurance for their workers. But when you talk about small businesses, small employers, it's down to 37%. So I'm going to be working with Senator Katie Fry-Hester on some legislation, and Brooke Learman in the House, a program that's going to use some of the federal money flowing into our state that I referenced earlier to provide an incentive and a subsidy to small businesses to provide health care for their workers. I think this is a great idea. We're going to roll that out in the next couple of weeks. And Linda alluded to a lot of the choice issues when we talk about the Supreme Court. And I'm a former Justice Department lawyer. That's what I used to do. a lot of those issues come to the Senate Finance Committee. So I'm working with Delegate Ariana Kelly and Senator Shelley Heddleman on several bills that will be in the Finance Committee specifically dealing with the issue of choice. So that comes within the healthcare rubric. So I just throw those things out. There's a lot happening in Maryland. We've been very innovative. A lot of our ideas have been borrowed by other states. I think that's, I'll stop there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next, we have a question for Delegate Fraser Hidalgo. One of the biggest disappointments, I think, of a lot of people was the climate change legislation last session, where it seemed like there was just sort of an inability to reach an agreement between the Senate and the House over some landmark legislation around climate change. So we're wondering whether there's going to be any effort to revive that legislation, and what role you'll have in that, and what do you expect to come out in terms of, you know, in getting more clean energy and tamping down on our carbon emissions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, unfortunately, last year, the Senate, Paul Pinsky, the senator from EHE, had a bill in, and he cross-filed his bill, or had a slightly different version in, as Dana Stein, the delegate. And for a variety of reasons, really, actually, I think kind of embarrassing, they just couldn't get on the same page for a variety of very complicated reasons. But you take in COVID, people can't see each other, they don't just run into each other naturally, they don't spend as much time together, everything's scheduled, everything's on Zoom, so it made it a lot harder. And in the end, they couldn't reconcile the balance sheet between the two bills. So what ended up happening is, in the kind of the 11th hour, some other folks like myself and some others had some individual bills as opposed to this big one omnibus bill. So we passed out some of those smaller individual bills at the last minute last year. One of mine, and Delegate Foley mentioned it, the state fleet, transition of the state fleet. That was one of my bills that I had on my own, but I was asked to hold that bill because that particular piece of policy was in the big omnibus bill. And then when the omnibus bill failed and we tried to scramble to get my bill out, we couldn't get it out in time. It was just too late. That happened to several bills. So this year, they have all gotten together, Delegate Stein, as well as Senator Pinsky and Chair Barve, and they're trying to get ahead of this issue. The Senate is putting together one big bill again. And the state, in the House side, we're going to have 4 or 5 of our own smaller kind of bills. I know for myself, I will have my own piece of legislation, which is again transitioning the Maryland state fleet to electric vehicles and electric school buses, which I've been working on for years. We got a really great bill out of the House last year and couldn't quite get it out of the Senate. But that bill will be back again, and there'll be a whole slew of smaller kind of bills. And I think the idea there is to just try to do everything we can to make sure that if there is some kind of failure at one point or another, it doesn't take a whole bunch of bills down. So I think we'll see a lot of individual bills that will get passed, and we'll see the omnibus bill. Hopefully that will get passed too. There may be some redundancy, but that'll be a big, a really important piece of moving climate change legislation forward. There were some other wins. We got 5 million trees. We got a bunch of money that the Chesapeake Bay Trust is managing to plant trees all over the state, which is exceptionally important, especially in city areas, just making sure that we help kind of deal with heat islands and stormwater runoff. Trees are like the best for that. Trees by creeks and rivers, it's really important. So that was a big win from last year, and we'll probably be working on that a little bit more this year. I hope that answers the question. And again, I'm happy to answer more. But I see
Andrew,
a red banner,
Andrew, can I just?
Yeah, thank you for giving us the time. Yep, I'll pass over to Senator Feldman if you want to hop on that as well.
Yeah, just really quickly, I think it's important when we talk about clean energy, and some of you know that about 2 years ago, I was the sponsor of the Clean Energy Jobs Act of Maryland that will take us to 50% renewable energy by 2030. But the arguments at that time, this is why it's so important, the bill that Delegate Chi and I worked on this year is, climate is important, but clean energy presents all kinds of upside potential economically. When you look at the package of bills coming from Capitol Hill, the infrastructure bill and potentially a bigger bill, there's a lot in there for incentives for clean energy. And a lot of it's job creation. For those of you who follow offshore wind, for example, big announcement, US Wind is going to build a project that's going to furnish jobs, the entire East Coast of the United States. Wind turbines are going to be built out of Baltimore County. Solar jobs are off the charts. And so, it's important as we talk about climate change, not only to talk about climate change in the context of the environment, but also that for a state like Maryland, it's going to be the states that put the clean energy infrastructure in place. And I think we're on the right path to do it, that will be the beneficiaries of the federal investment dollars that are clearly coming down the pike this year and next. And so I just have to throw that into the equation when we're talking about clean energy broadly.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Senator. I'm going to hop to the next question, which is for Delegate Chi. And it's about some of your work on ECM. I know that you've got a new chair there for the first time in what, 20 or 30 years or something like that. Particularly in this moment when we've got a lot of working families and a lot of working women who are facing challenges in the midst of the pandemic. Could you tell us about some of the priorities of that committee and what you see as coming out of that committee in order to help working families?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. You're correct. It's almost like a first time in a generation, because our former chair, Delegate Derek Davis, just became the Maryland State Treasurer, as Senator Feldman mentioned at the top of the program. So succeeding him is Delegate C.T. Wilson, who is from Charles County. And he has been serving Economic Matters Committee for quite a few years and was chair of the Business Regulation Subcommittee that I serve on, and I have really enjoyed working with him. And you're right, with the pandemic, everything changed. Last session, 2021, our Economic Matters Committee actually tackled a big weighty bill, which is called the Essential Workers Protection Bill. And many people on this call actually were involved in advocating for that. Many labor union advocates pushed for improvement of working conditions and PPE, free testing and time off and all of that. And we chipped away a little bit at a time. We came back again and again to try to make it work, and factoring in the federal aid as well as the state aid. But now it's the second year, 2 years of pandemic. We have learned some lessons of what worked, what didn't. We intend to come back to this bill and see how we can make it even better for our workers. So that's definitely a top priority. Another is the family leave issue, and including, some other committees will tackle childcare, but, for us, because we deal with business regulation and it's sort of intersection of public and private sector. So we look at those issues as well, because our Economic Matters Committee is not just the economic issues. Every economic issue is also a social issue in many ways, right? When you impact the real people. And we look at contracting fairness, prevailing wage issue that many of you also care about, government contracting and prevailing wage. So these are the issues that we will be tackling along with issues like clean energy, which is increasingly important in this day and age.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I'll hop to the next question for Delegate Foley. One of the things that you mentioned in your introductory statement was about transportation policy and trying to of course create that more opportunities for different types of transportation for everybody. I know particularly as someone who lives in the Up County, we've got a lot of traffic issues up here. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you plan to do in order to balance the needs of drivers and transit users, while also trying to move us towards a more, maybe fuel efficient mode of getting to work.
Yeah, well, my own personal opinion about the Up County is that, in addition to having, this growth up there that's adding to the traffic problem, we also have in the Up County, we have a dearth of public transportation. And I think that's, whether we're able to do that in one session or, this is probably a long-term project, but we do have opportunities to, particularly with the infrastructure bill that was passed by the US Congress, we do have some opportunities to improve that. And, particularly, we're looking now at the rapid bus transit and the we're talking in the caucus, in the Montgomery County caucus, about which transportation corridors need attention from the infrastructure bill. This is something that the Secretary of Transportation is taking a look at. So it's important that we use those capital dollars to help make that happen. The other area that I think can be improved in the Up County is the MARC. The Germantown MARC station is the busiest MARC station on the line. And, the MARC trains don't run very often. We can certainly improve the MARC trains. And then in terms of, when you talk about car transportation and traffic, I mean, there's always an environmental component to that. And so we have to be cognizant of that, because even though there are tremendous traffic problems, that we have to address, we also have to be cognizant of the fact that we need to make sure that we don't make the environmental problems, formidable environmental and climate problems we face even more drastic because of what we do with respect to traffic. So I think, there's a lot going on around I-270 and improving I-270, and are we going to have toll lanes? And a lot of that is being hashed out, between the governor's office and other interest groups that are out there, including environmental groups. And so having that balance is really important. But I think there are things that we can do in the short term to make it more palatable. I do think that it's an issue we have to keep working on. The other part of that issue is, and this is something that Delegate Chi, I know, has worked on quite a bit recently, is the whole issue of transportation safety, and particularly pedestrian safety. As we expand our roads and our road networks, and people are driving faster, and there are more cars, unfortunately, whether they're electric or fueled by fossil fuel, we still have an issue of pedestrian safety, and we need to make sure that we pay attention to that, as well as the last mile and bike paths, pedestrian walkways, all of those things that help keep traffic down. Where it bottles up. It's not just the main arteries. It's also the neighborhoods. So those are all things that we can work on. Those are all things that I see, in front of us, and hope to be able to craft solutions to.
Thank you so much for that. And you did sort of preempt one of the other questions I had about the toll lane expansion. That was something that someone had asked about. So I'll just sort of jump to the next one for Senator Feldman here. So it's widely known that you have been one of the champions of adult use cannabis legalization. I was wondering whether you could tell us about the status of that this session. There's been some rumor about perhaps a referendum, but it's unclear, whether or not the legislature is going to act on that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for the question. So the House and Senate are not entirely aligned on this one for the following reasons. So and I had a legalization bill introduced in 2021 that did not pass. So the speaker, and I think Delegate Foley alluded to HB1, the Speaker of the House has said that she will support a referendum question next November. But she's not really supportive of an all-out legalization bill, but a referendum. On the Senate side, and I'm the chair of a work group that's working on a bill that would be a companion bill. In other words, if you're going to have a referendum anyway, as the landscape in the country is shifting, we've got now Virginia moving forward, we've got New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Delaware's got a bill in, DC. So in the Senate, a lot of us think that if you're going to have a referendum, there's an argument to be made for that, as opposed to just a straight up bill. Have it a companion implementation bill, so that if the referendum passes, you can move forward and not delay for another year or two. Last year, in November, we passed a sports gambling referendum question without a companion bill, and we're still trying to figure out how that's all going to work. So the landscape is shifting. A companion bill, to me, also provides this advantage. A lot of voters want to go to the ballot, and they'll take a position, yes or no. They might want to know what's the meat on the bones. They want to see the details. They want to say, if I'm going to support a referendum, what does that mean for this industry? What's this industry going to look like? And also that's true of the members of the legislature. Before they support a referendum question, they want to know what the industry is going to look like. The only way you can do that is you have a companion implementation bill to go along with the referendum. And so that's what we're working on in the Senate. If that emerges, it'll probably, I'll probably be the sponsor of it. So that in a nutshell, the House and Senate are not entirely aligned right now on that topic.
Thank you so much for that. I will jump to the next question now for Delegate Fraser.
Can I just say one thing, Andrew? I just did one other point of that. So it's not just about legal. There's the bill that we're talking about and the bill I had last year. It has criminal justice reform. It's not just about licensing. We learned a lot from the medical cannabis program. But by the way, there's 37 states now have medical cannabis programs, and there are 19 states that have gone full-blown adult use legalization. So the momentum and the polling in Maryland are pretty clear, but there's a lot here than just money and tax revenue from the illicit market. It's also about expungement and criminal justice issues and mass incarceration and reinvesting money back into impacted communities. So there's a lot more than just, kind of a talking point here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's so essential because it is every bit as much a social justice issue as it is an economic issue and medical issue. And so I'm going to jump to the next question then for Delegate Fraser Hidalgo. There's been some talk about this session having a carbon pricing bill. I was wondering if you could tell us about whether or not that's something you see as a viable option, and if so, what that would look like. You're muted.
There we go. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I didn't want to go into too much detail because I didn't know what the interest was, and Delegate Foley mentioned it as well. So it's a carbon pricing bill and an environmental justice now kind of a bill. And essentially what it does is it puts a price on carbon, and then those monies are used and redistributed to those folks in lower income brackets, so they are held harmless, and it puts a cost per ton on carbon straight from the fossil fuel industries before it comes into the state of Maryland. We've had the bill in for, I think this will be the 4th year. It raises hundreds of millions of dollars, but it's a kind of a complicated concept, and the reason it's a little bit of a complicated concept is because I don't think most people realize that every year the government subsidizes the fossil fuel industry in the neighborhood of $100 billion with a B, $100 billion a year. That's just what we do. And that's what we've been doing for 100 years. We give them free land to go and drill on. We give them all kinds of exemptions. And that's the problem. So when you're taking the total cost or the totalities of burning fossil fuels, that's what the carbon pricing tries to do. It tries to kind of balance it out a little bit so that people, when they are going to buy an EV or they're going to put solar on their house or they want to invest somewhere, it makes a little bit more sense. I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone that when we're talking, and we're talking about in economic matters with Delegate Shih and Senator Feldman, one of the pieces of the bill which I talk about is currently the state of Maryland, us as purchasers of power, purchase approximately $15 billion, that's again with a B, of electricity from neighboring states. And a lot of that electricity is from fossil fuels. So it really is something that I've been trying to illuminate for folks, that we as citizens of the state of Maryland spend $15 billion a year buying dirty electricity from West Virginia and all our surrounding states. And then what happens is they kind of burn coal or they burn something to generate electricity for Marylanders. And then that dirty air then blows into the state of Maryland. So the sooner that we can get away from burning fossil fuels or buying or purchasing that from other neighboring states, the better off we are as a whole. Our air will get cleaner, and we will, generate more electricity at a cheaper rate and more dependable rate. So it's very, very complicated, and I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to talk about it in exceptional detail. I put my email address in the chat, so I'm happy to talk about that and anything related to that policy.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to go to the next question there for Delegate Chi now. I was wondering if you could tell us about the prospects of the Time to Care Act making it through the legislature this session. I know that's something that a lot of the members of the District 15 caucus have as a big priority. Oh, you're muted.
Yes, I always forget that. Thank you for that question. We actually were hoping to have that pass the last session, but I think that the pandemic shifted a lot of the timelines in terms of priorities and how much time we have to go through the details of these complex bills. We had a lengthy hearing the session before that, so we intend to pick it up. And I hope our new chair will make sure that we have enough devoted time on that. But I think this will be one of the top priorities. And I hope many of the people on the call will step up to advocate.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next question is for Delegate Foley, and it has to do with the right to choose. As we know, the Supreme Court looks to be threatening the Roe v. Wade precedent and the right of Marylanders and all Americans to have a choice in their own bodily autonomy there. So I was wondering if you could tell us about whether or not you see the legislature acting on efforts to make it easier for Marylanders to get access to abortion care.
Well, I think I'm not muted, right? Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, I think this is something that we probably will unfold as we're in session, right? A lot of it's going to unfold as we're in session because I think a lot depends on what happens with the Supreme Court and how they rule. I fear how they're going to rule, right? Senator Feldman might want to jump in here because he's actually, as he pointed out, this will come to his committee. But what I do know is this, that in Maryland, we have the right to abortion care in Maryland is there, and we've had it for many years since Roe v. Wade was passed, maybe even before that, but we certainly codified it at that point in time. And I don't know that we're in danger, like, it's not going to be a flash cut, right? That the Supreme Court will make a ruling and then all of a sudden we'll lose our rights to choose for our own bodies. But I do think that, it is going, I mean, we do have to be careful. We can't take it for granted, and that's what's going to happen. And so well, I personally favor, making it part of the Maryland Constitution. There is not a bill for that right now, but I think that's something that we certainly can look at in the future. And Senator Feldman mentioned Delegate Ariana Kelly from District 16 here in Montgomery County. She is a leader on this, and I look forward to working with her on that issue. I do think there is one bill that has already been filed with respect to abortion rights, and it requires, I don't know what the chances are of this bill passing, but it requires that hospitals offer, not just that they can offer, but that they must offer abortion in vitro and I think surrogate services for patients. So that's sort of interesting. That's the only one that I saw that was pre-filed so far. So I do think that this is something that's going to evolve as we go through the session, but we have to be incredibly vigilant about it because we cannot take it for granted. It's something that's really on the precipice. It's a right that's really on the precipice of disappearing everywhere. So we need to make sure that that doesn't happen here in Maryland.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I know that's something that we'll all be keeping an eye on as the year moves ahead. We did have one question submitted directly from an audience member right now, and that's from Mr. Jerry Garson about snow plows and for making sure buses are able to get through, which is very important right now, given that it's about to start snowing and we might get another 4 inches tonight. So I don't know if you would like to come on screen and ask the question yourself, Mr. Garson. Otherwise, I can read it.
Okay, I'll ask the question myself. In Montgomery County, we have regularly had problems in reopening schools after a snowstorm. This is because many of the streets are not cleared of snow on a timely basis. Is it possible for the Board of Education to work with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation on days when schools are closed due to snowstorms? Could we have the school bus drivers operate the county snowplows and salt and sand spreaders? This would help clear the streets faster, which would permit the faster reopening of the schools, which many times has taken a full week. During the summer, the school bus drivers could learn how to operate the snowplows. Currently, there are not enough snowplow operators in the county or enough school bus drivers for all the routes. This might need state legislation. I'm not sure if the county can do it because the schools are sort of independent of the county government. That's my
Thank you
question.
so much, Mr. Garson. I don't know if anyone wants to take a crack at that. I
Probably,
see Delegate
okay.
Fraser Hidalgo unmuting, so I'll pass to you first.
So this is what I think I owe Jerry a call about this exact thing. I don't know, Jerry. I think it's a really, really good question, and I made a note to follow up with that tomorrow because when you started talking about it, I was thinking, right now there's a problem with not having enough bus drivers, but those problems kind of ebb and flow as time goes, and so if there's an opportunity to engage with more plowing services, yeah, I mean, it sounds really good. I'm going to ask around to see if I can get an answer for you.
And Andrew, I would
Yeah, go
echo,
ahead.
Mr. Garson raised this issue with me, and almost every time we do a town hall, we do walk out with some kind of new, cool, creative ideas, and maybe this might make the cut for this town hall in 2022. But I think it's a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Garson, and thank you, Senator Feldman and Delegate Fraser Hidalgo for that. I'm going to go back to our list of questions. If anyone else has anything that they would like to ask live on air, feel free to put that into the chat or message me directly. I'm happy to sort of add that to the mix. The next question goes to Senator Feldman directly, and it's about the budget surplus. As we know, the state has a structural budget surplus right now. I was wondering if you could tell us about what you see as that being used for.
So we came in the fall here, was sitting at about a $4 billion budget surplus, but then the Board of Revenue Estimates just last month revised upward for the next 2 fiscal years an additional $1 billion in projected sales tax and tobacco tax and some other taxes that we're likely to. So I think likely we'll take half of that money and put it into a rainy day fund to guard against the next economic downturn. I should note, we have a AAA bond rating in Maryland. We're one of only 13 states in the United States that can say that from all 3 bond rating agencies. So we've been very good at kind of managing our finances. So I think we'll take about half and put into a rainy day fund for a future downturn. And then the other part of it, I mentioned earlier this, the subsidy for small businesses, small employers. This is part of where that money would come, that idea and that proposal is coming from this surplus money. And so I think we're going to, be really smart about it. I think we'll, again, take half of it, protect it, put it away for the downturn. But we do have a significant amount of money that we can, I think, invest in some really interesting ideas, whether it's, again, health insurance for people working for small employers, some ideas in the clean energy space. And there's a whole bunch of ideas that are floating around the legislature right now. But we're not going to take it all and blow it. That's for sure. Take half of it and save it, and then try to think of some great investments for the future of our state with the other thing.
How about putting a lot of that in the green bank?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely an excellent idea. That was something I believe that came out of last session, the Green Bank.
Hey, can I say, Andrew, one thing about Green Bank, since I was our delegate chief. So I mentioned the Clean Energy Jobs Act, just to show how important having colleagues on the key committees. So the Clean Energy Jobs Act of Maryland passed in the House by 1 vote in the House Economic Matters Committee 2 years ago. That 1 vote was Delegate Chi's vote. Had we not had Delegate Chi in the House Economic Matters Committee, that bill wouldn't have passed, and we'd be stuck on climate change and clean energy and past 13 to 12 or something like that. So a lot of these issues aren't slam dunks. I mean, you really got to have relationships, colleagues in the right committees, and that's really, really important, really important.
Yeah, important recognition also. So thank you, Delegate Chi and Senator Feldman for your work on that. I do want to say I apparently missed Councilmember Hucker had something you wanted to add to the last discussion. So if council member, you're still here and still wanted to add that.
Sure, Andrew, thanks. I don't want to interrupt, but I'm happy to help answer Jerry's question for and work with Delegate Fraser Hidalgo and Senator Feldman about redeploying our snowplow drivers for MCPS bus drivers. Unfortunately, MCPS missed 90 different school bus routes yesterday, and things aren't looking up. They are only getting tougher. So we have a big gap in our teachers, in our cafeteria workers, in our school bus drivers, in our ride-on drivers, in our firefighters, and our police. I was at police graduation today. We had 13 new police officers. That's one of the smallest classes anybody can remember. So we have a big workforce development challenge, and I'd love to talk to you about it. But on these county state issues, I would happy to work with Delegate Fraser Hidalgo and Senator Feldman to answer Jerry's question. Thanks for the question, Jerry.
Thank you so much, council member, for that addition. Sorry, I missed you the first time there. I'm going to go to a question we have from the audience. This is from Sally Murrick. If you'd like to ask the question yourself as well, we can highlight you here.
Hi, friends. Good to see everyone this evening. I've had issues for quite a while. The size of Montgomery County Public Schools, it's a $2 billion business. It's huge. And we only have a part-time school board. I don't know if this is, I will admit I'm ignorant of the laws. I don't know if there's a law in the books on the state that holds it back, or if that is something that the county has the purview to change. But I strongly believe that the size of this organization needs a fully dedicated school board with paid staff. And of course, it would need supported funding from the state as well as from the council. But what we have is what happens is the only people that can run for school board are people who don't need the money or who are retired, which is very limiting to the people of who we get on the school board. We need to be able to expand that candidacy. And so again, I put this to you. I don't know if that is a state issue, if that is something that in conjunction the state with the council, the county government needs to work on. But of course, it would need a big funding boost to get it to that point. But it would also open up the whole world of possibilities as to people who could run to be on the school board. So whoever wants to take that question on.
I can take a little piece of it. I don't know if you're aware, Sally, but there is a bill, and I think there's two bills in right now to deal with that. One of them is to expand the number of board members, and the other one is about redistricting and how we elect districts as far as board members are concerned. So that's a piece of legislation, a local piece of legislation that's in right now. We'll be having more hearings on it and voting on it in Annapolis.
Yeah, those two I knew about, but this specifically talks about going from part-time to full-time people, that this is their job and they're paid to do it, and they have paid staff to help them through their issues and to do the work.
So go on. The school board salaries are controlled actually at the state last time they had the pay raise issues have come to the state legislature. So it's really, you say full-time, part-time, it's probably just what's the level of compensation if you make it a full-time salary, by sort of de facto. I think that actually, I could be wrong. I think that's a state legislative function, candidly.
Yeah, and I think our local hearings on this, our local bill hearings on this, didn't Delegate Lidke talk about this?
Yeah, I think one of those
talked
bills
about
was
this
his.
issue, and he was talking about introducing a bill to increase the compensation for a school board. I don't think making it full time, but increase the compensation for school board members. So this is an issue that I think I recall that we talked about in our local bill hearing meeting.
Yeah,
just Councilmember Friedson also.
Yes, sorry. It is definitively a state issue. The school board is completely independent. It's a state agency. It's a duly elected body. It is established under state law, and the county has extremely limited jurisdiction over it. I mean, the capital budget, we have, a much more significant role, but in terms of the governance, the policy making, all of those issues, we struck the check, and that is, mostly it. And actually, state law prohibits the council, besides the general oversight functions of being able to hold hearings. We don't have a whole lot more power than that.
Great. Thank you so much for that question. And thank you everybody for your answers on that. I do recognize we are drawing down to our final 10 minutes here, and I do want to provide all of our District 15 members the opportunity to sort of give some closing remarks here. So I'm going to go in reverse order from how we started. I'm going to start with Delegate Foley here.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your great questions. For me at this point, this is all education for me, right? I'm learning so that I can get up to speed quickly and represent you as well as you've been represented by this team all this time. So as you heard, we have a lot of issues in front of us, and we have challenges with COVID and other things that we're trying to deal with. But I just want to say that I'm very excited about going to the General Assembly, and something that Delegate Chi alluded to earlier in her opening remarks, which is that, people said to me, well, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to take on, go to the legislature? Well, here's the reason, and you heard it tonight. The reason is that in Maryland, in the Maryland General Assembly, we get things done, and they affect people's lives. And we really have the opportunity to improve the lives of Marylanders and the people of District 15 in that General Assembly. That's incredibly exciting, and it's incredibly important. And then the other part of that matters, that we're seeing, in the country as a whole, we're seeing this sort of dissolve and get diluted, is that we need you all to be our partners in this. So we need to keep hearing from you. We need to know what your issues are. We need to know, how you think we can best address them. And then we need your help in getting it done. And making sure that things are implemented in a way that everybody benefits. So as the newbie here, I'm really excited about this whole prospect, and I'm really thrilled to be able to be a part of the Maryland General Assembly. I think that we're really privileged that we're in this position in this state, and that we have such a talented and hardworking legislature. And a good constituency that elects us and that we hear from, and participate in forums like this. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to the D15 team. Thank you to everybody who's on this call. And thanks again to my friends in the D15 caucus and the German Democratic Club for organizing this. Everybody, please stay healthy. We're going to get past this COVID, and then, and then we can put that aside maybe and keep going and keep building on the good work that's been done. Thanks very much.
I'll pass to Delegate Chi now.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for engaging tonight. It's always impressive when you sacrifice your time in the evening to join us and listen to us talk about the issues we work on. We just, as Delegate Foley said, we cannot be effective without your ideas. And just tonight, I've jotted down some ideas and thoughts that I thought we could capitalize on and circle back to see how we can help. We are here to help, whether it's through legislation or local district constituent services, which is year-round. Our job is also technically part-time, but it's never a part-time job. Once you sign on, it is more than full-time. You're never really off, at least mentally. You're always thinking about how you can help and solve problems. I am really looking forward to finishing my first term strong in 2022 session, in spite of the lingering pandemic. Currently, I am the chair of Montgomery County House Delegation's Economic Development Committee. So we're working on issues such as improving the business improvement districts, which Montgomery County should have multiple of, and DC has several. We want to be more competitive. We want to do placemaking. We want to make ourselves attractive to our kids, so they want to come back after college and build careers in businesses and communities. We want to have more Andrew Sandres of kind, right? Who are engaged in the community and do community building instead of leaving for Virginia, or Boston, or California, or whatever, you know. And that, you know, is the kind of thing we do and take and great pride in. I also want to say that as an immigrant, I care deeply about election issues, and I'm looking forward to working with many of you to make our elections more open and inclusive to immigrants who are very party averse. And I'm going to sound like a broken record on this issue. Even if the bill doesn't pass, I will keep talking about it until you're sick of me, until we pass that legislation, because it's reflective of the changing demographics, and it's personally important to me and many of the people I fought to represent, who are grossly underrepresented at every level of government. So I want to thank you for your engagement and for your indulgence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate Chi. Delegate Fraser Hidalgo.
Oh, Andrew. I have to say, every time we do these, it's herding cats, right? It's a lot of us. It's a lot of balancing. So between you and Margaret and Michael, I mean, Margaret's got her banners up telling everybody it's hard. It's hard. I always have this ongoing joke with former delegate Aruna Miller, and we always text back and forth about the time and who's taking how much time to talk. So that's always fun. I didn't get a text from you tonight, Aruna. But look, thank you so much for putting this together. I think it's great. It's just great to get out and get into the community. I think that what was said by Delegate Chi and is often a lot of our ideas aren't our ideas. Most of the time, there's somebody else's ideas, whether it's an advocate on one particular issue or another, or our constituents that come with a problem or an idea that needs to be implemented and or resolved. So I look forward to this session. It will be yet another challenging session for a variety of reasons. I think we're past a lot of the really hard stuff as far as COVID is concerned, but there's still a lot to do and a lot of lessons that we have to unpack. We won't be unpacking it in just this session. We'll be unpacking it in sessions to come. And with that said, I want to do everything I can because I love our team. I love working with Lily. And I love working with Senator Feldman and Delegate Chi. And I wanted to just give a little bit of a shout out to Delegate Foley, because Delegate Foley is in the same exact position today that I was in 2013, 2014. I got appointed right going into the fourth year of a 4-year term. It was crazy drinking like a fire hose. So I know whatever outreach you can give to Delegate Foley as these next 3 months progress, I'm sure she'll appreciate it. And I know that myself and Brian and Lily are committed to helping her along, because people just, it's the fourth year of a 4-year term. Everybody thinks you know everything already. So the new person can slip through the cracks pretty easily, but we're going to do everything we can to help Linda and make sure that she gets all of her questions answered and we move forward. Thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate it. And again, I've put my stuff in my contact information in the chat. Please reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate. And we will pass it off to Senator Feldman to close out the night.
Okay, with the 2 minutes left till 9 o'clock. One thing about, I should say something about redistricting. So District 15 is not going to change very much. What is changing, though, is the population shifts of our state. The DC area continues to gain population. The Baltimore region is losing population. So we're actually going to gain, we have 8 full-time senators now in Montgomery County. It's going to be 8+. Baltimore City has 5. They're going to go down to 4. So the power shift to the DC area is going to emerge starting in 2023. I'm going to pick up on a theme. Most of the action in the United States is in the 50 state capitals, not on Capitol Hill. We passed a state budget 47-0 in the state Senate of Maryland. That doesn't happen on Capitol Hill. The Finance Committee, as I mentioned earlier, broad jurisdiction, actually the Time to Care Act, that's a Finance Committee bill. But bottom line is it's going to be, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of change. In the Senate, I'm going to be the point guy on healthcare, clean energy, and anything cannabis. And so you can email me, weigh in on whatever you think on anything in the Finance Committee or in the Senate. And my contact info is in the chat as well. So thanks for coming tonight. And we're at 8:59. So we're going to give you back 1 minute of your life. Now.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Hope you have a wonderful evening. Sorry we didn't get to every question. I encourage you all to email all of these people. They've put their contact information in the chat, and they're very responsive. So thank you all for coming out. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. Great job, Andrew.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Everyone stay safe.
New Year.
That was Mackenzie, as you know, Andrew. Happy New Year.
Mackenzie did a good
Very
job.
very good.